For Jaden Brown, tennis has always been an escape. Time away from the chaos and confusion happening at home. On the court, she has control.
Hi, I'm Jaden Brown. I'm 10 years old, and I'm from Granger, Indiana.
Today is the last day of school. Yes. We will be attempting 6 serves.
She plays with passion, energy, and a kind of reckless abandon. She's a lot like her dad in that way. The former Michigan captain and NFL safety was a force on the field.
Corwin Brown laid him out.
Snap again, and it's blocked. It's picked up by Corwin Brown. Brown has an escort.
After nearly a decade in the league, he became a staple on the sidelines, coaching at Notre Dame and with the New York Jets. At just 40 years old, Corwin Brown was forced out of football in 2011. The reason and what happened next has been a story too painful to tell. Until now. His children have paid a price, and they can't stay silent any longer.
His personality was the type that everyone loved. He was just so warm and welcoming and inviting.
He had this big smile. He was super goofy.
He inspired everyone to work a little bit harder. I wanted to be just like him in all things. He was a superhero.
We kept coming back and coming back. Just a great win.
Something that I always knew from a young age, that my dad put everything into football.
The man would sleep in the office because he was so dedicated to the job. He would come home late because he would be watching film. Holidays, he would be leaving early. And his coaching career ended pretty suddenly after his mental health took a severe downturn.
A lot of times, because my dad was away, I would sleep in my mom's bed, just being 8 years old and wanting to be with my mom. And in the middle of the night, my dad had come home and he just started yelling. He was being really aggressive towards my mom. My mom had left the room and he laid next to me and he looked at me and he said, "I'm a monster. I don't know what's happening. I'm a monster."
He was just kind of gloomy and would almost isolate himself, it seemed like.
It kind of just kept snowballing from there. He would get paranoid. He would think that police officers were following us, that people were listening, thought people were leaving me messages in the books that I was reading. At some point, I decided I had to be responsible for making sure that he knew that no one was following us and that everything was safe and that it was all gonna be okay.
What is pretty much ingrained in my memory was when he first got a gun.
I immediately grabbed Jaden and we hid in the bathroom.
He was looking out the windows, thinking people were watching him. He came up to us and he said, "I would never hurt you guys with this. This is to protect us." I knew my dad would never hurt me, but I wasn't sure, if he would hurt anyone else.
41-year-old former NFL and college football star Corwin Brown stands accused of holding his wife Melissa hostage inside their Indiana home for 7 hours before eventually shooting himself in the stomach and surrendering to police.
I remember sitting upstairs with my dad. I was just asking him for nothing bad to happen today.
My parents are fighting. He was just getting really upset. And that's when he started threatening her.
He was pulling her up the stairs, and I was screaming at him and begging him to stop. And then he pulled out his gun. And I got scared and I ran away, and I was just screaming from another room. And the gun went off, it misfired.
That probably is like the most horrible sound I think that I have ever heard in my life.
My first thought was my mom was dead.
I just get stuck on that like 2-second period where I think that the man who was my hero and my best friend and I loved did the worst thing that he could have ever done.
And I just couldn't help but feel like if I just hadn't like left that room and I just would have sat with him, that like none of it would have happened.
I thought it was my fault. Just going over how I could have fixed it if I was just a little bit better or smarter. If I had just been around a little bit more.
I felt like when he came home, I had to like walk on eggshells.
My dad was pretty medicated at this point. He was much less paranoid, but now he just felt kind of like an empty shell.
I was like just embarrassed about kind of what he just didn't like take care of himself. Like he wouldn't really like shower that much.
When people make the name association and say, oh, is your dad such and such? If they're big football fans, they'll always talk about some big hit that they remember him being in.
Over the middle, incomplete. Shannon Sharp hit at the goal line by Corwin Brown.
The big hits were exciting, but I remember how he looks directly after those hits.
And both players are still down.
Yeah, I don't get excited about them anymore.
We know how many concussions my dad has suffered through. He would talk about all the time, playing through all of his injuries. And there's no doubt in our mind that football is the reason for his decline and where he's at now.
I want people to know how devastating it is to basically lose a parent and still have them there. I don't recognize him anymore.
I don't even want to say like it gets better because I feel like yeah, he's not like violent, but like it's not like he's himself. So like I can't even say that.
The person that always wanted to work the hardest isn't really there anymore. He kind of just exists now.
I used to pray every single night that my dad would go back to normal.
I hope they can cure it. And he just wakes up one morning and he's like back to how he was, excited to attack the day with enthusiasm and be the person I remember.
He told me I could do or say whatever I wanted, and in a way I think it almost shows who he is and like how he is a leader, because he knows if this is happening to him, it's happening to his teammates and the people that he cared most about.
Maybe as emotional as you've ever been as a football player.
I will never forget as long as I live.
Corwin Brown isn't ready to share his side of the story on camera, but told Jaden he's deeply proud of his children for sharing theirs. For Corwin, every day is a different battle, fighting off symptoms he can't control. Doctors can't tell him with certainty that he has CTE. They won't know for sure until they see his brain under a microscope. But nearly 95% of former NFL players studied whose families suspected they had CTE were in fact diagnosed with the disease after their deaths. Right now, scientists at Boston University are working every day to discover treatments that could help cure Corwin, or at least slow the progression of the disease. That would be an answered prayer for Jaden Brown, who has found peace accepting the fact that the dad she's known most of her life is not the present Corwin Brown. the man known for his work ethic, for his energy, and his jokes. She doesn't know if she'll ever get that Corwin Brown back. But she does know she will never stop telling his story and her family's story.